All right, hello everybody. Welcome to the Art as a Message lecture, Artistic Activism. So as it kind of sounds, we're going to talk about like art and activism today, and kind of like how art is tied to activism and protest and resistance and all of those things. And this is not a new concept, although it seems like all of a sudden art is obviously gotten very political. There is a lot for people to complain about. Your upcoming art assignment. But people have always had something to complain about. We're going to talk about some of the more recent things, but also some not that recent things, and some it's all contemporary art. In the grand scheme of things, y'all just might not have been alive yet, because y'all are fairly young. All right, well, we'll get started. So up here, we'll start off with the first slide. So here we have the Trump death clock, and this is by Eugene Jerikai. Sorry, I got those letters mixed up. This is like the premise behind it. In January 2020, the Trump administration was advised that immediate action was required to stop the spread of COVID-19. According to NIAID Director Dr. Anthony Fauci, that's just the thing. There was a lot of pushback to this advice. President Trump declined to act until March 16th. Experts estimate that had mitigation measures been implemented 1 week earlier, 60% of American COVID-19 deaths would have been avoided. So, this is basically saying that, based on research, 60% of the deaths from COVID could have been avoided because of Trump's inaction. So, this is the figure that I got like 2 days ago, whenever I was putting this together. This one right over here. And this Trump death clock has traveled all over the country. This was in Times Square. This was like in maybe March sometime, I want to say. I don't really remember. 44,000. But this 127, something like 4. So obviously we have had more deaths than that, but this is like a percentage in the U.S. because of Trump's neglect. So there we go. And this is protest art. It is making a statement. This artist doesn't really care if you agree or not with this statement. He is making a statement to put it out there. Gotta accept it. And, you know, this also with art as message thing, to get back to the reading in the book and the podcast, if y'all are listening. Dr. John, whatever his name is, he has a kind of narrow view of what art is, obviously, at least in my opinion, or what art is and can be and should be. So obviously he probably would not think that this was art. He would think that this is just a billboard. He would think this is just like a statistic. But who decides, like at the beginning of mass, we were talking about who gets to decide what gets to be called as art. For him, maybe that's not art, but it's going to get a lot different too next week in socially engaged art, and social practice art. But yeah, Trump death clock, it's active online. You can go to, there's a link right here, and there obviously always more info at the bottom in the notes. But this is more of an on the nose message, as they were talking about. Like some artist message, like artist activism kind of things, messages within art, they're buried deep within and you have to like figure it out. Some aren't. So we'll see that. Alright, so activist art. Activist art is a term used to describe art that has been grounded in the act of doing and addresses political or social issues. And then a term underneath here is artivism, and that's just another term that has been used to describe like art and activism. Artivism, it's pretty self-explanatory. Explanatory. Oh my gosh. Whew. Okay. So what we have here is Weiwei. We have talked about him a lot. He is the Chinese contemporary artist, and he does a lot about like social issues and political issues, and this is particularly about the refugee crisis. And so in 2015, Ai Weiwei covered the pillars of Berlin's Konzerthaus, which, yeah, I'm not really sure what that is, with 14,000 used jackets from refugees of the Greek island of Lesbos. So, what we have here, and Ai Weiwei has made a lot of art referencing the refugees, but he's clearly making a very loud political statement. These are bright orange. But not only are these life jackets like on here to like represent the refugees, they aren't just there to represent the refugees. Like a few lectures ago, we had the backpacks that were new backpacks meant to represent the children that had died in the earthquake. These are actual people that wore these. These are life jackets that were left on the shores of the Greek island, and they gave them to Ai Weiwei for free because they didn't have a use for these. Like, they were like, sure, have them. They had too many. So he makes a statement about this is how many people are coming here. They're seeking freedom from what is happening in their country, and yet we don't want to help them or let them in. People don't cross waters. At the time of this, like already, and this was 2015, like over 400 people had died like that. Like a lot of people die a year crossing the river. I don't even know. No, that's exactly what Banksy's doing right now. Y'all go watch Banksy's, it's a video on our calendar. It's in your like what to watch section. And Banksy's out there rescuing refugees in the Mediterranean. So here Ai Weiwei is more of a drawing attention to it. Banksy is like a actively doing something about it. And those are two different ways of being activist artists. Sometimes drawing attention is what like can help raising awareness and getting people to act, letting people know that each one of these is a human. Okay. Oh, yeah. And more about artistic activism. So artistic activism is a dynamic practice combining the creative power of the art to move us emotionally with the strategic planning of activism necessary to bring about social change. Art and activism do a different work in the world. Yeah, it's all under there actually. Y'all will learn more about activist artists as we watch it, because activist artists, what they're trying to do is just bring about change. They're trying to show you either how the world can be different, what's happening right now in the world that needs to change. They're trying to show you the injustices, the problems, a lot of things. Environmental issues. All right, so in resistance art. In the umbrella of activist art is also resistance art. They're like brother and sister, I guess you could say. Resistance art is used as a way of showing their opposition to power holders. This includes art that was that opposed such powers as the German Nazi Party, as well as opposed to the apartheid in South Africa. So that's kind of where like the roots of like resistance art came from. But obviously resistance art is still very much a thing today. I mean, this is resistance art. The Trump in Times Square, like the naked one, was resistance art. There's the Trump baby is resistance art. This is by David Kearney, and it is called Gesture, and it is from 2013, and it is like just like a steel sculpture as a big middle finger. And the Czech artist, he's a Czech artist and anti-communist activist, and on the eve of the Czech general election, he floated the statue of the hand gesture in front of the castle where like the political people were, and because of perceived corruption, and the president supported the Communist Party. Yeah, drawing international attention and for sticking it to the man. So, you know, it's not just that it happens everywhere. Everybody, you know, art is how we think through what's happening. It's how we respond to the injustices in our lives, what we want to change, what we're angry about. Art's a great thing to make when you're angry. Gets your anger out there. It helps people vent. Better art than, like, go guns and stuff. All right. Guerrilla communication. All right. So guerrilla communication refers to an attempt to provoke subversive effects through interventions in the process of communication. It can be distinguished from other classes of political action because it is not based on the critique of a dominant discourse, but in the interpretation of signs in a different way. Its main goal is to make a critical, non-questioning of the existing for reasons ranging from political activism to marketing. So that's a lot, but also this is like exactly what this is. So I'm gonna tab this because then y'all can maybe see that better. All right. So I'm gonna say that last line again. So its main goal is to make a critical, non-questioning. That's the important. It's like, it's not saying that this is something that we are questioning. It's a fact. We're just stating it out there. Of the existing for reasons ranging from political activism to marketing. And that's always where things get like, you know, people think that things are always like political, but sometimes this is just stating. Okay, so this is a campaign by Carrie Mae Weems, and we've talked about her in the photography unit. And she is drawing, what did she call this? Okay, so this is her campaign. It's called Resist COVID Take 6, and it's like an activist campaign for resisting COVID, and like take 6 is take 6 feet back. But so what she does here is she has all different posters. So this is posters that would be on, and they're placed all over different like large cities. These are matchbooks, billboards, and this is like a digital billboard that changes, and there's buttons and stuff. So it's like a marketing campaign, but it's a marketing campaign geared towards making sure that minorities understand their heightened risk for COVID. So, she actually is using photographs from a photo series that she had recently done, and the majority of them are African American youth. And yeah, so on this one it says, sadly, you are most impacted by COVID-19. Wash your hands, cover your face, keep a safe distance, get tested. And what she's also doing here intentionally is drawing that connection, because we see a man in a hoodie, a black man in a hoodie, and you know the implications of that, and because Tamir Rice and up here she says on this billboard, it says, of course it matters, all life matters, but my point is when all is said and done, people of color have been the most impacted by COVID-19. Just look at the numbers. It's sad but true. And what she's doing here, she's drawing these parallels between COVID-19 and the Black Lives Matter movement in both of these scenarios. And yeah. So on these it says, beware the ultimate cost of violence. Contrary to popular belief, your life does matter. It may mean your life. And in all of these, on the other side, it has the like resist COVID. They have like a little logo. I should have put it bigger on the slide. I'm sorry, I forgot. But you know, I can't read those because they're too small. it's like you wouldn't know unless you looked it over, you wouldn't know that it was like necessarily talking about COVID versus Black Lives Matter, and you know the parallel between the fact that we're living in both a global pandemic of the medical proportion, and also African Americans are disproportionately dying at the hands of police, and disproportionately dying at the hand because of COVID, and not just because of their oh my God, there's just it just is. We have a white supremacist president who doesn't care. He doesn't care. All right. So, the art of protest. So, protest is an expression. Protests express opposition through action or words, an act of making a strong public expression of disagreement and disapproval. I'm sure y'all all know what a protest is. We have been living through a lot of protests this year. I love a good protest, and here we have a protest that is literally created by artists, and this is created by a group called For Freedoms and the Wide Awakes, and it's a group that also consists of Hank Willis Thomas, who we have talked about before, but I'll talk about him again later. And so the name For Freedoms borrows from, and this For Freedoms is an art collective, and Wide Awakes is an art collective. They're like the same, but not the same. For Freedoms is a larger group, and the Wide Awakes is for right now. So I'll tell y'all about For Freedoms, and the Wide Awakes is like a collective for the election. So we'll get to that. So For Freedoms is borrows from Franklin Delano Roosevelt's For Freedoms, a 1941 address to Congress outlining the former president's four-tiered pathway toward freedom and equality. It also is the namesake of a series of paintings by Norman Rockwell from 1943. The predecessors in mind, the contemporary For Freedoms is the intent on depicting the more equitable vision of the American people, one that includes racial, religious, gender, and class diversity. So, yeah. That is what they do at the For Freedoms group does, and that's like the overarching group, and they are like an art activist protest group, and then we have the Wide Awakes. So both of these groups actually draw from history. So the For Freedoms draw from their name from the Thomas Roosevelt address, and then the Wide Awakes draw their name from a group of abolitionists who would stay awake at night to make sure that people weren't taking freed African Americans and reselling them into slavery and stuff like that, in the Revolution, and trying to they were staying awake at night. It's a lot to history. So, and they are wide awake, and they're the whole woke and Wide Awakes. Yeah. So, For Freedoms is an artist-led organization that models an increase of civic engagement, discourse, and direct action. We work with artists and organizations to center their voice of artists and public discourse, expand what participating in democracy looks like, and reshape conversations about politics. So here, what they have done, the Wide Awakes and For Freedoms, is in collaboration, the Wide Awakes and For Freedoms, they have made these protests, and they do them in New York and all over, in Chicago, and big cities. They've done a few, and Hank Willis Thomas is there, and they're really artfully done protests, as you can see. And they have these stilt walkers with costumes, and it really is about showing the power of art and protest together, and how whenever arts and protests come together, and it really can make change, and they're trying to make sure that people vote. That's what they're doing, making sure that people are aware and take civic action and become politically engaged. So yeah, the art of protest. All right, so political pop. political pop is a term coined by art critic in the 1990s to describe the art created by a group of Chinese artists. These are some of the prominent ones. This is by the artist Li Shan. This is by Yu Han, and this is by Wang Guan Gai. And so basically what these artists are doing is like they're creating art in the 90s, but they're kind of recalling the style of Andy Warhol in the 60s, and like that pop art movement, and like their screen printing and stuff. But they're also, not only are they using that pop art style of the 60s, but they're doing it with a political and social undertone. So they juxtapose the Cultural Revolution propaganda and imagery. So just like in the 1960 pop art, Andy Warhol was always doing like, you know, like the Brillo box and like, yeah, pop art, kidding. Sorry, my cat was about to knock over the protractor. And so they kind of talk about like the consumerism culture, and that's the same thing that they're kind of doing here with in the 90s, and but also they're bringing a political spin by doing pictures of Mao. And so this is Mao with a flower in his mouth, and it's like more feminized and like a more political statement. And then this is Mao as Marilyn Monroe, which is also about like the westernization. So they are criticisms of the Chinese society, growing fascination with wealth and luxury following the austerity of the recent past. So now China has like become more globalized, and the culture is more obsessed with wealth and more, you know, like Gucci logos and political like materialism. You know, we've already made it there as a culture in America. But here it's like materialist art, and so he's kind of like putting the two and two together. Yeah, so. All right. So environmental art. Environmental art is art that addresses social and political issues relating to the natural and urban environment. It is like similar to like eco art, and you know, yeah, it's art that deals with the environment and like trying to make things better, and like either you're going to work within the environment or you're going to say something about the environment. A lot of times it's like with global warming and pollution and stuff like that, recycling. Y'all probably get it. So yeah, this is a work by, or I guess like a couple of works by Sarah Cameron Sundy, and this is actually one of the extra credit assignments, but I would like for y'all to vote. But if you want another extra credit assignment, this, which, did one of the lives happen recently, or is it, I don't remember the dates. I'm not great at dates. I have to look on ELC to know that. But this is one of your extra credit assignments, so, but you have to actually go experience it either via a live stream or at the museum. Just heads up. Read it on ELC. So, Sarah Cameron Sunday, and this is her 36.5 durational performance at sea, and in these performances, and they're like videoed and stuff, and she does them at all different places. She goes and she stands in the tide from like both high, like through the tide change, through the entire cycle of the tide change, and people often will join her. They don't always. So it is a thing. It's an environmental thing, and what she's doing is so here, I'll just read this. At each site, Sunday stands in the ocean and water for a full tidal cycle, 12 to 13 hours, as the water rises up to her chin, then recedes to her feet. The local community participates in all aspects of the work. The entire performance is filmed in real time, turned into a durational video of work of the same length and shown as a multi-channel video installation that premieres on location within a week of the performance. As Sunday performs at sites around the globe, she hopes to make connections through communities across continents. This shows the slow unfolding of time. It counters monumental or sublime repressions of nature, the violent sea, its overriding in intellect and senses, with something more subtle. Not the ship dashed against the rocks, but the water lapping at your collarbone. This is the radial gesture in itself. By stressing endurance, continuality, and incremental change, 36.5 holds out the possibility that there's still time for meaningful action. So what this is a call to action, essentially. This is saying this is what we have right now. We don't want to lose it. We need to, work to ensure that it's around forever for future people. So, a lot of activist art, protest art, resistance art, whatever you want to put it under, has a lot to do with identity politics. So identity politics is the term used to describe an anti-authoritarian political and cultural movement that gained prominence in the USA and Europe in the mid-1980s, but is still very much in full swing. Just began. Asking questions about identity, repressions, inequality, and injustice, and often focusing on the experience of marginalized groups, which is a lot of art that we talk about anyways in this class, but here we are. Now you have a term for it, identity politics. So this is a work by Byron Kim, and it is called Cinco de... Okay, so, and each of these are like a little canvas that measures, or oil and wax on plywood. Each panel measures 10 by 8 inches, so it's like not quite as, it's like a rectangle, yeah. So Brian Kim is a Korean American artist, and this is an ongoing project of portraiture that now comprises more than 400 panels, each a single hue ranging from light tan or pink to dark brown. Finding sitters among strangers, friends, families, neighbors, and fellow artists, Kim records each person's skin color in oil paint mixed with wax that he applies with a palette knife on a single 10 by 8 inch panel and a common size for portrait photography. When the work is installed, the accompanying subtitle consists of the full name of the sitters, arranged alphabetically by first name. Cinco it was a watershed for the artist and received much acclaim since it first showed in 1993 at the Whitney Biennial. Subsequent iterations have been in installations and exhibitions around the world. The work can be installed in many ways using some or all of the parts in a grid of almost any size or shape. Kim's work explores the history of abstract painting, the problems of color and vision, and issues of human identity and existence. The title refers to a figure of speech in which a part represents the whole or vice versa. Makes clear the issues that of representation, both visual and democratic, are in play. Senado. So probably Senate. Y'all, I'm so dyslexic. Yes. So each one of these is a single grid of like a person's, every person's skin tone, and arranged in a random order, and then so you never know who is who. It just shows you like what is in a tone. We're all just people. Each one's a person. In the end, you don't know whose name goes with which tone. We're all people. All right. Feminist art is art that seeks to challenge the dominance of men, both in art and society, to gain recognition and equality for women artists, and to question assumptions about womanhood. So, this is a work by Judy Chicago. She is a feminist artist, and yeah, she is like one of the first feminist art, one of the early feminist artists, I guess. I don't know if you can say that first, like. She was like calling herself feminist in like the 70s, so it was like pretty early. So this is the dinner party, and this exists at the Brooklyn Museum of Art. Whenever I saw it, I cried. It is a very large. This is so it is literally a table, the installation that like, and so and in the middle there's tile floor with 999 women's names. And there's a triangular table. Here, I've got more. And then they're relating to the honored at the table are, so there's 999 women inscribed at this, and then there's, how many? I'm not that good. Like, 40? Maybe. No. There's a lot of women. Each table, each place setting is a woman. And I don't even know. Like, this took Judy Chicago from 1974 to 1979. 5 years to make. And so at each place setting is a plate that kind of relates to, it's a flower, but it relates in some way to the woman also. And there is like a side that's like women of history, and there's their side that's like mythical women, and then you know, like Mother Earth, and I don't know. And then there is a side, like there's like women artists on there, scientists and things like that. So it's a lot of people. And I remember George O'Keeffe's plate is like, that's that one right there. Cause it's a flower that like is actually 3-dimensional. And then on each person has, on the tablecloth, they have their own like tablecloth where it's hand embroidered the person's name that she's honoring. And then on the tile there's all of the names, and this is massive. It's in a whole room. It's like low light. It's a very overwhelming piece. This is feminist art. So yeah, there's still a lot of feminist art today. This is just like the start. And if y'all want to know more about like feminist art, I don't know if I should share this, but so I love feminist art. I love so I actually made a feminist artist quilt, and so I figured I should. Oh, this is upside down. Probably should do this in the light, but. So, and I made this after, like, kind of like, I put Judy Chicago in the center with the triangle, because it's like, that's her thing. And, then I also have Yayoi Kusama, Tracy Emin, Jenny Holzer, Kara Walker, the Guerrilla Girls, Lorna Simpson, Barbara Kruger, and Sharon Neshat. So, basically what I'm saying, in like what I did with this is I'm saying that Judy Chicago started this movement of feminist artists, and now all these women have been inspired by her, so I put her in the center. And yeah, but it's very important that we have intersectional feminism. And yeah, I don't know, I'll talk about my artwork later. I don't know if y'all even care. Alright, the Guerrilla Girls. So the Guerrilla Girls were on my quilt. I've talked about them before. The Guerrilla Girls are a artist collective. They wear a gorilla mask and miniskirts sporting pseudonyms of dressed as lady artists like Frida Kahlo, Kath Kolowitz, and Alma Thomas. The feminist collective Guerrilla Girls started shaking the art world over 30 years ago. You can sign up. Anybody can like sign up to be a Guerrilla Girls. It's like a thing that people can join, but you have to be like an artist and like. Probably, I don't really know. So they have posters, billboards, stickers, and they create dialogue around feminism and like both like a lot of it's about like women in the art world, the advantages of being a woman artist, and do women have to get naked to be in the museum, and unfair treatment. And they also take a lot of like political stances too. So yeah, this is the Guerrilla Girls, and you know they wear masks. So they're anonymous and feminist, and they work with identity politics. All right. So another aspect of identity politics is race, and art often addresses racial identity. This is by the artist. These both are by the artist Richard Bell, and Richard Bell is an Aboriginal artist living in Australia. And you know, like a lot of the, just like here, the Indigenous people are often not treated the best. And there is a video about Richard Bell also on the calendar that y'all can watch. So his so here what he did, so here it says, "Pardon me for being born into a nation of," and you can kind of tell what it says, but he cuts it off the words, but you can kind of understand that it's going to say racist, and this is actually, so this work was done in 2012, but it's also like titled "The Lone Protester," but it harks back to a protest during the 1971 South African Springbok Rugby Tour, which was an anti-apartheid tour, or like time when anti-apartheid supporters from around Australia protested against South Africa's racist politics and their human rights record. The word racist is cut off, but we can still finish the sentence. All understand the message. Almost 50 years on, and shamefully little has changed in America, Australia, South Africa, the UK, and across the globe. So this is from a photo of someone taken from that protest, and then he kind of but on their sign it actually said racist. And he was just like sitting alone protesting with a sign that's like said, "Pardon me for being," and it's like the truth. Like, sorry that you have a problem with people existing. So yeah, and then he says that there's no black problem. So yeah, Richard Bell. So the Black Power movement and the Black Lives Matter art and activism. So Hank Willis Thomas, you know, he was working with the Weiwei and the Four Freedoms in the protest thing that we saw earlier. I've talked about him before. But Hank Willis Thomas has done, he has this like traveling exhibit that it's been to, I know it was at Crystal Bridges, and it was at, is it Arizona? And it's like all art is political. But these are some of the works from it. And, so up here, this is called Strike, a hand, and then a baton. And, you know, you don't even have to know, like, there are no skin tones here, but you know exactly what this refers to. This baton is very clearly a police baton. And there's a lot of power to that. Because, like, you get it. And then this is the black, you know, like the raised fist from the Black Power movement, and a hair pick, and this is called All Power to All People, and I believe this has been at a few different places, like as a public sculpture it has traveled. And then at the bottom we have I am a man, and then each one there is like I am like 1/3 of a man, am I a man, am I a man, I be a man, amen, I am. Who's the man? Yeah, so there's like a lot of playing on like I'm a man. And if you aren't aware of the civil rights protest signs, that literally would just say like, I am a man, but like there aren't any that say exactly like that. But in those letters, it just says, and it was, they were protesting because they were saying, I am a man, I should be counted as, not as like 3/4 of a man, not as, but as a man. So Hank Willis Thomas is a conceptual artist. So he is interested in the ways that popular imagery informs the people around and perceive themselves around the world. So, as you can tell, he kind of plays on appropriation of what's happening in our own visual culture and what's like news and life and, you know, history. Like the pick, the pit and the fist are both very reminiscent of the Black Power movement because like the celebration of natural hair and the afro. And then the Iron Man, so yeah, identicologist, Black Power. And then next we have this. These are two works by Titus Kakar, and both of these have been on covers of the Time magazine at different points. This is yet another fight for remembrance from 2014, and this is painting, and this is just from 2020. So, I'll start with this other one. So this one right here was after Michael Brown, the Michael Brown protest. And it was the cover of the Time magazine, but I have a lot to say about this one, so I'm going to mostly just talk about this so that this lecture doesn't take forever. So here he said, this Black mother understands the fire. Black mothers understand despair. I can change nothing in this world, but in paint I can realize her. That brings me solace, not hope, but solace. She walks with me through flames of rage. My Black mother rescues me yet again. I want to be sure that she is seen. I want to be certain that her story is told, so this time America must hear her voice. In accompanying this cover, so in this picture we have a Black mother who is holding a silhouetted child, a child that has essentially been cut out of the painting. So he also wrote this following poem. I cannot sell you this. Following poem. I cannot sell you this painting. In her expression, I see the Black mothers who are unseen and rendered helpless in this fury against their babies. As I listlessly wade through another cycle of violence against Black people, I paint a Black mother, eyes closed, furrowed brow, holding the contour of her loss. Is this what it meant for us? It means for us? Are Black and loss analogs and analogous colors in America? If Malcolm could not fix it, if Martin could not fix it, if Michael, Sandra, Trayvon, Tamir, Breonna, and now George Floyd can be murdered and nothing changes, wouldn't it be foolish to remain hopeful? Must I accept that this is what it means to be Black in America? Do not ask me to be hopeful. I've given up trying to describe the feeling of knowing what cannot be safe in this country of my birth. How do I explain to my children that the very system they set up to protect others could be a threat to our existence? How do I shield them from the psychological impact of knowing that for the rest of our lives we will likely be seen as a threat, and for that we may die? A MacArthur won't protect you. A Yale degree won't protect you. Your well-spoken plea will not change hundreds of years of institutionalized hate. You will never be as eloquent as Baldwin. You will never be as kind as King. So isn't it only reasonable to believe that there will be no change soon? And so those without hope burn. Black mothers understand the fire. Black mothers understand despair. I can change nothing in this world, but in paint, I can realize her. This brings me solace, not hope, but solace. She walks through me, through the flames of rage. My Black mother rescues me yet again. I want to be sure that she is seen. I want to be certain that her story is told. And so this time, America must hear your voice. This time, America must believe her. One Black mother's lost will be memorialized. This time I will not let her go. I cannot sell you this painting. All right. Yeah, just go read it. That was powerful. All right. So, queer artistic activism. So these are some posters by the artist Daniel Arzola, and this is called his I Am Not a Joke series from 2015. And each one says different things and pictures like a different person of the LGBTQ community. So here it says, my sexuality is not a trend, your ignorance seems to be. This one here shows respect is not a charity, it's a right. Which is true. And then that is a person that has had perhaps half gender assignment surgery. I don't really understand. But because it's only half, but probably. So if God is bothered by the way I love, let him be the one to tell me. Very self-explanatory. Gender is a construct and only I can construct it. And then my sexuality is not a sin, it is my own paradise. These are all pretty on the nose types of like activism. This is like protest posters, but like also raising awareness. In the I'm Not a Joke campaign, the series of images is inscribed with compelling truths about the human diversity that encourages individuals to live as their authentic selves. He wants the images to eventually appear on buses and subways, exposing audiences to the realities of queer experiences in an attempt to break down prejudices in a form of activism he calls artivism. So here comes up that artivism again, that word that I had at the beginning. Most of Arzola's work comes from personal experience as an LGBT person growing up in Venezuela. He had a violent adolescence because of Venezuela's intolerance to the LGBTQ community, and when he was 15 years old, they tied him up. Okay, that's just sad. Y'all can read that if you want to. I'm not gonna. He has experienced a lot of trauma, and he wants to raise awareness and acceptance of LGBTQ people. And again, this is not a new thing that people have been doing, trying to raise awareness and kind of for LGBTQ rights and queer art. Keith Haring is one of my favorite artists, and he has passed away. He actually died of AIDS, but before dying of AIDS, he actually was also active in creating art to help the AIDS movement and help fund different things. So, AIDS activism and awareness, and these are all artworks by Keith Haring. This one up here, Silence Equals Death. This one is Stop AIDS, and this one is Fear / Ignorance Equals Fear and Silence Equals Death. So AIDS Coalition to Unleash Power, also known as ACT UP. The AIDS Coalition to Unleash Power is also known as ACT UP. So we see that right here, ACT UP right here. Is an international grassroots or political group working to end the AIDS pandemic. The group works to improve the lives of people with AIDS through direct action, medical research, treatment, advocacy, and working to change legislation and public processes. So the ACT UP group has taken the pink upward facing triangle as like their symbol. So you'll see that like here and here. So the triangle was originally used to identify gay men for persecution and internment during World War II. But the triangle was reclaimed in 1970 by pro-gay activists, and it was used as a point up triangle by the AIDS Coalition, by like the AIDS Coalition ACT UP in the beginning of the 80s. So I think like it used to point down, but like they pointed it up and painted it pink. The ACT UP people did. So yeah, champion the LGBTQ community. So that's another thing. So they have taken a symbol that was once used to persecute LGBTQ people, and they have used it as a symbol of empowerment and taken it back. So Keith Haring is an American artist graffiti, and he grew up in New York, painting like on the subways in the 1980s. After gaining notoriety, Haring focused primarily on color creations on street culture and social activism, portraying characters in sexualized situations to advocate for safe sex and AIDS awareness. So he often, like, his art is playful, but at the same time, like, he crosses that line between, like, it looks cartoony, but it is also, it holds, like, a powerful message. It's, like, yeah. Due to lack of proper government response to the American AIDS crisis, Haring and his fellow artists led a fight against the virus through grassroots education, die-in demonstrations, and awareness-sparking initiatives like deeply moving names project AIDS Memorial Quilt, which now displays over 94,000 individuals. Haring is one of the such names, having passed away in 1990 due to AIDS-related complications after a very short lifetime of advocacy and activism, but only after having crafted iconic imagery that continues to live in the public consciousness. So, yeah, Keith Haring started becoming active much in the same way that people are currently very vocal about the coronavirus pandemic, because Ronald Reagan would not even utter the words AIDS. He wouldn't do anything to help research or anything. Yeah, just didn't really care. But it's all full circle. And yeah. What was mentioned in what I just read was that as a response to Ronald Reagan's lack of acknowledgement of AIDS in the 80s, this AIDS Memorial Quilt was started, and it was started in 1987, and you can still add panels today. And so the quilt was conceived in 85, but it didn't start until 87. And now it has over 48,000 panels and weighs 54 tons, and it currently lives in San Francisco. But whenever they first started the quilt, obviously it wasn't that big. They laid it on like the lawn of the White House, or like across from the White House or something, to draw attention to like the people that have passed away, because each square is like dedicated to a person, and right in front of like Ronald Reagan's face, and then they bring it out like every year. So there is an interactive AIDS memorial quilt that you can look, if you know anybody who is featured on the quilt or who has passed away from AIDS, you can search people by name. And they have been digitized thanks to the San Francisco Archive. And yes, so anyways, quilting is a form of craftivism, and craftivism is a form of activism, typically incorporating elements of anti-capitalism, environmentalism, solidarity, or third wave feminism that is centered on practices of craft, or can traditionally be referred to as domestic arts. So sewing, domestic arts. Oftentimes, and we will get to this, people think that, you know, there is a difference between art and craft, and they cannot be the same thing. Sewing is an art. So craftivism includes, but is not limited to, various forms of needlework, including yarn bombing, cross stitch. Craftivism is a social process of collective empowerment, action, expression, and negotiation. So exactly, it's crafting activism. So it's using things like quilts to have a message. This would be like craftivism. The day after Trump won the election, I did this needlework or embroidery. So yeah, yarn bombing. If anybody's seen that, it's where people like crochet around like sculptures or trees or benches and stuff like that. Yeah, craftivism. And last but not least, all right. So this is a documentary. I have it. There's a link right here. It was by Indecline. It was just released yesterday. Today is Wednesday. It was released in, what is the date? The 13th of October. It was released on the 13th of October, and yeah, this, I've already watched it once, and I'm already planning on watching it again. It's only 45 minutes. I highly recommend it. It's called The Art of Protest, and yeah, this is just the trailer if you want to watch it. I'm not going to put it because this thing doesn't make enough noise for y'all to hear. But yeah, click on it there. I also put it on the calendar. If you really want to learn about the protest that is currently happening, Indecline is a art group that is like a political art group. They are the ones that did the naked Trump in Times Square. So, and it's not just about the Indecline. They're just the people that produce it. They talk to a lot of people. They talk to Shepard Fairey. And that was pretty cool. So yeah, y'all check it out if you want. All right. And go make some political art. Do something. It's now the time.